Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 139, we have joining us Josh Fisher. He's editor-in-chief of Fleet Owner, where we talk about how the publishing world has changed, the impact of artificial intelligence on publishing, and the evolution of trucking technology. He also offers his thoughts on how trucking is doing with these new technologies, the collaboration in the trucking industry, and the benefit of having smart people stay in the industry. He also gives us his opinion on what he thinks is making the trucking industry stronger. Today we have joining us Josh Fisher, a longtime friend, and we'll get into that here in a minute, but he's editor-in-chief of Fleet Owner. I'm really excited to have you on today, Josh, and we're going to explore some fun stuff in this half hour. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. It's always great to connect with you. Normally it's on the road, but I'm happy to talk with you through the radio waves or whatever we call these podcast sounds these days.
Do you remember how we met?
It was the first assignment I ever did in trucking. It was for American Trucker, which is one of our old publications that now is a newsletter called For the Driver. And I was writing a story about efficiency. And I knew very little about the trucking industry. This was nearly 10 years ago, because I'll be 10 years, I think, at Fleet Owner this September. So Sean Kilcar suggested that I reach out to you. And, I'm like, I couldn't believe, one, how nice you were and how you walked through a Luddite like me in the industry into how these things matter. And I thought it was so cool now looking back that you were like the first person I interviewed in the trucking world about for a story. And I always think back, and so many of those things you talked about for that article are still true today. And about how, and it was just like learning about how the different segments need to treat efficiency differently. That, if you're doing a regional haul or you're doing city delivery, aerodynamics are not going to matter as much as long haul, which is obvious. But from, I think for people coming new into that, into this industry, a lot of that stuff is not obvious. That's how I remember it. Do you remember it differently?
No, well, I wouldn't have remembered the exact one, but I'm honored that maybe I was early on in your trucking work. And the better we pull people in and share with them how the industry works, but also not be naive or old school and that this is the way it works, is the way I'm always going to be. This is the way it works, and these are some things that maybe can adjust and morph, and here's some other things that are pretty fixed. Is a real goal of mine. Maybe I'm getting a little on in my career, but the column I write, I mean, if Sean Kilcar, now that you mentioned his name, he called and said, "Hey, we're doing this thing. Would you mind writing something every week?" And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do that for a couple of years, for a couple of months or something. Then I'll run out of things to talk about. But getting ready for talking to you, I started in August 2014. So that's prior to you. And that's like 12 years. And we did a little quick count, Denise and I. It's like 600 items in Fleet Owner that we've done. I'm like, oh my God, that's a lot. And we try not to be redundant. I mean, like she and I will actually say, well, we talked about that a few years back, but it's different now. And so let's morph a little bit. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts and now 600 times. Wow. I'm really interested in, how you're adapting the I don't know, do we call it a magazine anymore, Josh, or the outlet? So tell us a little bit about what's the latest in that kind of evolution, and where do you see Fleet Owner today, maybe a little bit of its past, and where is it going?
The publishing world has changed so much. In May was my 25th anniversary of being in journalism, being paid to do it. I joined my first newspaper in May 2001 in Reading, Connecticut. And unfortunately, that newspaper no longer exists. Trucking's not the best comparison to it, but, as companies get bigger and they buy up smaller companies, they figure out ways to still try to maybe make some money off of the smaller companies while investing less in them. And that's what we've certainly seen in the newspaper business, which is something that I've always, held like close to me because that's how I started my career. But I think fortunately the trade business and B2B publishing is in a little bit of a better place than general consumer news because we focus on certain segments of the industry, of our various industries, something that you can't get just through a simple Google. search, but AI is impacting the entire business. It's like we spent so much time over the past few years trying to focus on search engine optimization and making sure that you have something alluring so that when people Google it, they want to click on you. Now you Google something, you get the AI answers, and it's a lot more work to actually click on an article. So I think that one of the nice things I'm happy about, we saw a lot of other trucking publications in the industry get rid of print, particularly during COVID, right around the COVID era. We stuck with it, and AI can't really penetrate that. It's, when you get a copy of Fleet Owner in the mail, you get to actually flip through it and look at everything. You get to actually see the ads, which is a great value to our advertisers.
Yeah, the way I think about it, we all take in information differently. Some people are word people, some people are numbers people, some people are graphics and then video, and there's probably more I'm missing. But I think we're in that age where we get pulled in by our kind of go-to maybe thing. So whether that's a website or something we printed in our hands or whatever, or a newsletter.
Yeah.
And then once we're there, then I think then we search a little differently and we go find maybe something deeper and better. So they call that, I think, stickiness in websites. Do you get in and
Yeah.
stay in or not? And so, yeah, so I think we got to do it all. And one of the things I've seen with you and your colleagues at these trucking shows, I mean, you've gone from, writing on tablets to, literally typing on tablets and also taking pictures and videos and doing interviews. And so it's, everybody's got to become multimedia. I haven't heard that term in a long
Yeah.
time, but yeah, it's a big challenge, but I think it opens up tons of opportunities to pull people in.
It really does, because the thing is, look at 25 years ago, it cost a lot of money to share information with somebody. There was this, that old newspaper saying you don't pick a fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrel. Well, now everybody has free ink that they could share, and those are pixels. So there's a very low cost of entry to get into sharing information.
I did my master's work in the late 2000s, and I think it was Stephen Forbes we had in. He was coming through Fort Wayne, and he spent an hour with us on a Saturday morning. And what I remember, this goes back to like 2008, and what I remember was, him recognizing that his world was going to be just overturned because everybody was going to be a reporter and there was going to be no more reporters. It's like literally everyone. They had a phone in their pocket. They'd have the internet in their pocket. They could publish, quote unquote, their thoughts and opinions. Right. I mean, I always think about the tornado. Right. You don't need to have a news camera van out. Everybody's got a camera, so we're all looking. Oh, there's a tornado. So you take it, and all of a sudden it's on CNN or the Weather Channel. And so he was very like future thinking. Okay, well, what does that mean to me and my organization? And if you're not thinking that way, and now we have AI, which is probably another big huge challenge to the status quo. Anytime there's a challenge, there's opportunities, or it wouldn't exist. I looked back the other day at some of what the founders of NACFE gave me, and I'm real proud. I mean, just the basic work we do at NACFE with confidence reports, guidance reports, Phil's one of the things. And then they wanted, they had a bold idea of some demonstrations. So not just talk about this stuff, but really show what's happening, in the real world. So, things, so Run on Less, I think, does that quite a lot, and we've been able to pull out into the public domain some really cool stuff with Run on Less, how to be, I mean, the recent diesel trucks did 11.5 mile per gallon, which just blows my mind. But that's hauling real freight on real routes. And then, things like the Tesla semi range and charging, we sort of blew that out into the public domain with Run on Less in 2023. Feel like in some ways, I just want to keep going. There's so much I want to see get farther along than it is right now. We'll see how it goes. Josh.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been amazed, Mike, at your like constant enthusiasm and like optimistic attitude you have. Because if you look at, I'm sure that obviously things look different than they did 16 years ago when NACFE launched. But then we also
Yeah.
had kind of the early promise of battery electrics late in the last decade, and we expected them to be doing more this by the time we reach now, and now we've seen that not happen as much. But
Yep.
battery electric has fallen back some. We've seen diesel get more efficient. We've seen more trucks reach over 10 mpg. In that first article that I wrote, and you set me up with Henry Albert, he was one of the first drivers to like consistently be getting the like those double digit mpgs or close to them. And now that's not even the news that it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And what I'm real proud of is and we do this in our fleet efficiency study, we call it now, where we look back all the way back to 2003 on what was bought on trucks and what was the fuel economy performance. And so it later this year we'll publish our most recent analysis of that. But basically what's happening is finally, and I say finally, I shouldn't have expected it earlier, but these aerodynamic trucks with good fuel economy and great powertrains, where the 2007, 2010 emissions have now matured, where, these are great efficiency trucks. And now they've kind of found their way into all of the used equipment and the smaller fleets and the owner operators. It's kind of difficult to see that long and tall 4 mile per gallon truck out on the freeway. You see it, but they're more going, some of them are going to truck shows, or they're doing very little miles. And so what we're seeing with the national average is a pretty big now improvement in the last 5 years in the national average. So we're burning less fuel and moving the freight with diesel trucks, and that almost gets lost in the noise of our industry with all the regulations and the this and the that, and everybody's got to chime in on what's not working or what isn't the right future for trucking and so forth. But our ability to just make diesel trucks more efficient, I'm glad you brought it up, is proving out, and it's helping all over the place. So tell me, for 10 years now you've been following things, and so how are we doing as an industry with these new ideas and new technologies? Like, there's always the big disruptive kind of things like automation or self-driving trucks, or get a driver out of the truck, to battery electric, hydrogen, and so forth. But I do think our focus on data is helping us. But as an industry that's 125 years old when the first truck was made, how are we doing keeping up with things as an industry? And I've got some thoughts too, but curious what you think.
I would say, like, if you had to give it a grade, it'd be a B plus. And probably if you asked someone who was in my position maybe 10 years ago, it would maybe be a C. I feel like the EPA 27, which certainly has been weakened, but still is going forward. But the fear out of that really pushed a lot of collaboration within the industry. You saw, big companies, Volvo and Daimler, working together on fuel cell technology and on, and then a lot of the big OEMs joining together on battery production. But then it's just the data. There's so much data out there. And I think also maybe part of it too is it's like once you get in this industry, you might not stay with the same organization, but you stay in the industry. So we've seen a lot of smart people bounce around to different OEs or suppliers. You got to think that has some sort of connective tissue there in really kind of driving some more shared ideas, and just with all the data out there. And I think now we're seeing a lot of, for a while it was, oh my god, there's so much data, what do we do with all this data, how do we know what data to choose, what data to ignore? And now as computing power has increased, I think that we're getting a better idea of what the data is that matters, and what the data is, and what that data could tell us, and how that could lead to more improvements. But people used to say, I remember years ago, that trucking was a slow adopter of some technologies, which isn't always true. I mean, who was truckers were one of the first to be using like email out on the road, calling cards, if you want to go even before that, when that was actually like an advanced technology. You had to put have a roll of quarters with you.
You think about remote work. I mean, a trucker sleeps and eats, and oftentimes in the truck stop. So they've been remote working their whole careers, right?
Yeah, and they've been crowdsourcing for long before that, just with the CB radio. which now we're certainly seeing that kind of fall back some in its use. But then there's also, it's funny, I'm actually just like wrapping up a story about Sirius XM radio and about how it launched, and they have the Road Dog Trucking
Yep.
channel that has really become this like community hub for the industry, because before this century, if you're driving long haul, you're changing. If you want to listen to the radio and listen to news, you're changing that radio station. Every couple hours, you're going into a new local market. And now you can listen to the same thing, even if it's not Road Dog Trucking. If you want to listen to news or whatever, or music, you it's one less thing for a driver to worry about as they travel all around the nation. We wrote a lot about 5 years ago or something about 3G cell services sunsetting, because so much telematics and stuff was running off of that, and now you see them diving right into 5G. and
Yeah.
and the power that has. It's like 4G was not even, it was kind of the general thought going in to the move from 3G to 4G LTE was, okay, this is what we're going to have for a while. But everyone's been taking advantage of the 5G and how quick and how much data that can transfer. And we've seen the telecom companies do a pretty good job of rolling out 5G all across the nation.
One of the things I notice in the industry, whether I'm going to, regional events or sometimes like trucking association events, small fleets and the really localized trucking with, small truck stops and so forth, is they're incredibly informed. And maybe that's kudos to your outlet and others helping them. But when the electric trucking started, and I'd go to some of these things, and I'd had this thought, well, okay, these guys aren't thinking about electric trucks. And they were very, very well informed. Now, they weren't exactly buying them or, thinking they were going to impact their business right now, but they're very informed. So I think we got an industry, and maybe this is a shift to trusting technology more, as we all do. I mean, when the first cell phones came out or smartphones, man, we didn't, they were struggling. They didn't work always real well. And now we just treat them as just, an update's an update, and we don't have problems anymore. So I think we're trusting the technology more. We're looking for not just, okay, it's a change I don't want to deal with, to, okay, well, this is coming. How does it benefit me and my business? And I think we're seeing more of that. So I think my experience is it's a very informed industry. Maybe we're a little slow to actually pull the trigger and adopt or go with the new thing. But that comes with time. First of all, you just got to get comfortable with things changing. And I think your 4G to 5G might be a great example of that.
Well, one of our goals and our purposes at Fleet Owner is our primary readers are like, our sweet spot are those with like at least 6 vehicles to 1,000, which is most of the industry. But those are the guys who also can't always afford to try out the new technologies and invest in it. So what we really try to do is we try and talk to experts like you, but also to the big carriers that are maybe publicly traded or have a lot more investment and can try these things out, so that we can keep the mid-sized and small carriers up to date on what's working, what's not working, what they like, so that they can be informed as that sort of technology, kind of spreads throughout the rest of the industry.
Right, right, right. And that's sort of, if I think about the secret sauce at NACD, we're out trying to work with the early adopters, which tend to be some of the bigger fleets, the mega fleets, and some of the larger ones who have kind of the scale and wherewithal to do some of these things, and understand from them and their whole village or their whole support network, how has it been, buying or leaning into these new things, and then take that and, put it in our magic hopper here at NACD and put out reports and tools and advice on how sometimes the smaller fleets or other fleets can do the same thing. And sometimes I'm asked, well, why the big fleets share with you after they've been on the bleeding edge? Because don't they see that as a competitive advantage? Yes, they kind of do. But on the other hand, if they don't share what they've learned and the industry doesn't improve the things that aren't going so well, even though they're on the leading edge, it's still going to be messy and ugly for a while.
Yeah.
So if they share, and then the industry can improve on some of the things that are causing them heartache with this new technology or new system or whatever, then that's a good thing. And that's why I think a lot of the NACFE fleets and manufacturers who work with us do that, because they know it will help them more than it being, not doing it and trying to make a competitive advantage out of it. So Josh, we're always running out of time really, really fast. So, for the listeners that are hearing this, kind of what, you have a little bit of sage advice for folks who maybe get frustrated. You mentioned a little earlier that, that I have a positive attitude, or NACV does in general, but how do we get through sort of those moments where we go, ah, shit, this isn't going very well? Any advice for all of us as we go along?
I guess my advice is, or my it's not advice so much as like a confidence in thought, and that's a confidence in like the US economy and US technology and in the industry. We've seen a lot through this kind of deregulation isn't necessarily the right term of how like the Trump administration has been running things, but there have been like a regulation pullback, some increases in some areas too. But particularly when it comes to efficiency, is that we're actually letting the market dictate what works and what doesn't work. And I kind of felt like a lot of the incentives that the former federal government was pushing, even California is pushing, were not something that necessarily a company would want to make their business case around, being guaranteed to have incentives and grants to get equipment. And now we're seeing some of that pull back, and it's the onus now is back on the manufacturers to prove that their technology works. And I
Mhm.
think that is what makes things stronger. We've seen that throughout American history. We just finished wrapping up a fun look back at the past 250 plus years of transportation. We did a fun America 250 issue for a fleet owner, and included images all the way back to wagons that that colonists were using in the 18th century to move goods and really help build out those pathways that now we are our state routes and our interstates run along those areas that our ancestors were hauling goods with a couple of horses. So I guess my advice is to is to trust the market, trust the economy, and trust capitalism, frankly, that is really proving time and time again to be one of the most sure ways to make sure that we continue to move goods in the best manner that we can. Because without trucking, where's America? It's not advice, but it's faith. And I think that we've proven, even though this has been a very like long freight recession, we're seeing it subside.
Yeah.
And I think that those who stuck around during this are just going to be stronger. And I think that by the time we reach 2030, which is going to be here before we know it, we're going to have a lot more options, and they're going to be batteries will likely be lighter. Trucks will be more efficient. We'll still be burning diesel, but we're going to be burning less of it. And as like a free market capitalist, in my heart, I feel like that is going to prove time and time again that that trucking is in a good place.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. This has been a lot of fun, my friend. You have a good time. I'll see you out on the road somewhere soon, and we'll catch up. But thanks for sharing your thoughts. This has been a really good podcast. Take care.
Thanks, Mike. Good to talk to you.
Freight Efficiency with NACV's Mike Rosen Friends.